Oh my goodness. Seriously, I have to just do it. It's like I can tell myself I don't have to think about things that don't matter.
I was designed to do those things. How the hell does this guy know this about me?
It's impossible to not see.
When Dan read for my sister, she was like, he's psychic. She's like, how did you know that?
Yes.
She's like, it's human design, guys. Like, it's just a testimony of how legit it is.
Seriously, Danny was like FBI or CIA. He's like, how the hell does this guy know this about me?
Having my chart read, there were just thing after thing after thing that I was just like, wow, that's me.
This man is reading me and I've never met him before.
I was in the midst of one of the biggest emotional waves I've ever been in my life, and he saved my life.
It seems like everybody has the same reaction. It's that aha moment, and they want to find out more. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Human Design Advantage podcast, our Sunday show. My name is Jen, and decoding the matrix for us is Dan and Guru. Hey, Dan.
Jennifer, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Happy Sunday.
Yeah, happy Sunday. I was just out catching some rays. It's such a beautiful sunny day over here. It's amazing. Yep.
It's not here. It's kind of drizzly. But we had a beautiful day yesterday, and I'm very grateful for that.
Well, then we switched.
Yes. There we go.
Yep, there we go. Excited about today's show. I guess.
Yes.
Hopping right into it. We need to do more of these as it relates to the people that we read for, that I read for. You know, it's bring them on, let them, and bring their charts up. And today is about a couples reading, and that I did before, and we're going to sort of continue it a little bit, as well as answer some questions and just get some feedback from them, generally speaking. And people need to see this, I guess.
Well, tell everybody that you specialize in couples sessions.
Yeah, this is my specialty is just reading, generally speaking, but I've noticed I have a special knack for reading for couples without having to read for them separately first. That was always what was the norm. You read for them separately so that they know what they're getting into before you put them together. I've found a way around that. And so I've been reading for people directly. It's an amazing experience. Just like I said in the show note, just a very short, the amount of empathy a person has for the other once they realize what their husband or wife is helpless to be in so many ways, like a profile. Why are they always? Well, there's a profile. You can count on this, or count on that. And suddenly they start to loosen up about what might have annoyed them, or what was driving a wedge, or then they see the things that they really like about the other and they realize, oh, that's going to stay. I don't have to worry about that leaving. I fell in love with that thing. And, some people are always paranoid. Oh, it's always a honeymoon in the beginning. And then it's like, no. If you enjoyed that part, if that was part of your honeymoon, it's sticking around.
Right. That's beautiful to find out.
Yeah, it's a wicked nice thing to find out. That particular feature in your model of husband or wife is written into their code. It's going to stick around. And it's just, I can't tell you now how many times there's been a marriage, there's been a thing. These guys weren't, David and Moana, they were not, on any kind of on the rocks or anything, but, so I didn't have to go through any like real healing sessions like I have with others. Some of them have been right on the rocks, ready to go, ready to pull the trigger and get separated and get away from each other. And after the reading, suddenly that goes away. It's been a near 100%, not totally, but near 100% success rate on that. And it's just a really great feeling to watch that take place. So couples, reading for couples and fixing the approximately $35,000 divorce problem you're about to have is a pretty sweet deal all the way around. Kids get to keep their parents get to not go broke. That's just the surface of it. Obviously, it's very deep. It's very deep, but I'm smiling because it feels good,
Yes.
So
awesome. Well, I'm excited for today's show. You ready to dive into it?
Let's bring them on.
All right. Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, everybody. So meet David and Moana Sangeo. They're from, where are you from in Canada again?
About Toronto.
Near Toronto, just a suburb of Toronto.
Okay, so the burbs of Toronto. So they're from Canada, and it's everything's thawing out up there, I assume.
It's nice and bright today. Yesterday it was really drizzly and windy and no bueno. But today it's like
No bueno.
super shiny outside. It's nice.
Yeah. So we did our couples reading a few nights back, and we covered so much ground. We stayed on longer than the recording would allow. That's what I remember. It was pretty good. And we just got through so many things, and that was the second one, wasn't it?
It's crazy because even if it was just the second one, I still feel like you're just like scratching the surface. Like he had so much more to say. I just know it.
Moana, you are like literally right on the money. Me and Jen can attest to that. The beginning is always scratch. It's always scratching the surface until suddenly it's like, oh, I've scratched below the surface. That seems to be how it works out. Confusion, and scratching, and then suddenly, oh, I'm through.
It's so much information, but it's so much beneficial information, and where you can apply it in multiple areas of your life. So learning the surface level is a great way to go, but when you do start diving in, you're definitely going to get to a point where you're going to break the surface into the next layer.
So before we pull up your charts, now that we're through time number 2 and we've seen how all the stuff works out, is there any one main thing or a couple of main things for either of you that have stood out that was before unknown, or especially the stuff that was either you loved the most about your partner that you found out is going to stick around, or that was an annoyance that you found out didn't matter as much, or was something that now you know what that is?
I mean, I think we kind of talked about this after the sessions. We kind of like, oh, what were your most surprising things, or is there anything that stood out? We kind of, it gives you a nice talking point, right? Because, before there may be a lot of things that you didn't understand, right? So myself, I'm not as familiar with human design, I think, as Moana was prior to coming in. And, we're all still learning a little bit about it, but for me, I think it was interesting to kind of find out how the charts kind of really fill in the gaps between your two persons, right? As two different beings, you're feeling, you're your own person, but they're their own person, and then together, the auras affect each other. And how do they affect each other? Like what gates are they completing? How does those behaviors interact? And I think like that's something you're not necessarily consciously aware of prior.
Right.
And now that it's kind of been highlighted, we're thinking, oh yeah, like that, you behave that way and I behave that way. But when we're together, we have a different kind of behavior, and this, those patterns that we might have had in the past that might have been a bit of a friction, now we can kind of step back and understand it better. Like, I think that was a huge value for us. I think that's my big takeaway from it. What did you think?
I mean, yeah, to add to that, there was things about him that in the past I would have been like, oh, he's doing that thing again. And I would just have an internal monologue and just get angrier and angrier, and then eventually explode.
That's your not self. Anger.
Yes.
But now that I know, it's like, no, that's just what he was built to do. And I'm like, okay, well, why don't I just tell him what I need instead of just like internally keeping it in and bottling it up? So that was just like a huge like, oh, moment. I'm like, no, he's not being a prick on purpose.
He's helpless.
That's just how he operates. So that was really good. And I don't think I was ever in the realm of thinking, oh, all his good traits are going to go away. But it was nice to have a confirmation that, no, that's just how he is. Because one of the things I adore about him is I'm always like, let's go try this thing. And he'll always say, cool, let's do it. He almost never says no, which sometimes I'm like, come on, like, can't you play bad cop for once and keep us from doing stupid stuff? And he's like, nope, I'm never going to say no to you. And after the reading done, I'm like, that's why he does that. Okay.
Well, now that's a dang neat arrangement. I'm never going to say no to you. That is, let's get that into the vows somewhere.
Well, her being a manifester, she's probably coming through as informing.
Yeah. for sure.
Right, and making an impact and so forth, and then.
So he had something to respond to. We're gonna go along.
Yeah. So, Moana, have you seen that responder inside of David? That thing that's instantaneously in the now, if it happens.
Oh,
And
so like when you were mentioning that he has almost like gazelle type reflexes, immediately a incident came up where so we were pushing our toddler around. I mean, David was on a suitcase, but he fell over, and within like split seconds, he was able to grab on to him before he fell head first into a concrete floor. And his like reaction time was insanely fast. And there's other instances where usually kid related where he just bolts, and I'm like, I wasn't even done thinking my thought and he's already gone out the door. How did he do that? And yeah, I was like, oh, that's crazy. That's in his design. That's how he's able to do that.
It's the beauty of a generated response with integration definition. It's a generated response. And by the way, David, it's like you couldn't even help it. No. On the other side of that thing could be something that's about to chew off a couple of your fingers, and you're still going to do it, and lose a few fingers to do that. Not that we wouldn't do that for our children, by the way, but I'm just saying it's a generated response. It's hard to stop. Can I ask you a second question? Have you guys noticed this thing? And I always bring up this axiom, this what do I call it, a rule of thumb. I got to come up with another word for axiom. That's showing my age there a little bit. But a rule of thumb where the 5-year-old inside of all of us always contains our truth. And when you say outside of the human design arena, when I say, hey, the 5-year-old is always right, most people listen to that as a quaint remembrance and a nostalgia rather than a factual truth. It's factually true. The kid in us, the 4 and 5-year-old that can articulate but not quite conditioned yet, that little guy or gal is always spitting out the truth when we tap back into it. So do you remember that? And then the other axiom that said, and the stuff that's difficult as you're seeing it, the experiment is to see it. And I would say seeing it kills it. If you're having a problem with it, look at it. And then seeing it with the awareness of your design, it disorganizes that thing's ability to disrupt your life. It keeps diminishing it. And so seeing it kills it. Have you noticed the kid is always right, seeing it kills it? Have you noticed either of these two things starting to take place?
Yeah, I think what I was saying earlier, like understanding our charts and how they interact, like being able to see it definitely dissolves like the tension that might have been there before, right? Or if we had a conflict or something, maybe a repeating pattern that might have come up. Now we look at the chart and seeing it, and we're like, oh, well, that kind of explains it. That, you behave this way, I behave this way. Together, we behave that way. And that kind of makes sense. We can kind of frame it in a way to understand it, and understanding it like dissolves the problem, right? So definitely, I think we've noticed that. I think, the 5-year-old is always right. I think, in Moana's example where she's kind of suggesting ideas and I don't say no, because that's my 5-year-old reacting, and I'm saying, yes, let's take me on an adventure. Let's do this new thing that I've never done before. And, like I've been to places in the world that I maybe would have ever done without, being a partner with her. And
definitely would have not gone.
David, you're both a fixed trip, these 401 profiles. And David, in many other circumstances, you would root yourself and potentially be there your entire life and never move more than a few miles around you if it all satisfied your rhythm. If everything sat in your rhythm, you could easily correctly for yourself stay there.
Just makes so much sense, because he has lived in the same like suburb area of Toronto his whole life. All his friends are from like middle school, high school, university. Meanwhile, I've moved like 5 times internationally. Wow. So I'm like, I have no friends. Meanwhile, you just stayed in one place and you have a big support network. So I'm like, oh, that's why. I'm like, I kept moving around and you stayed.
Well, every time you look at what David's doing, sorry, David, to talk about you in the third person, but every time you look at what David's doing, recognize that channel of rhythm he has makes him that is the one channel that we have common with all life, all cellular life. And so like a cell will try and fix its surroundings so that it can survive as long as possible. It's these fixed patterns that they're wicked healthy. So David, community rises up around you. You know what I mean? And Moana, the community that rises up around you too, because you're also a fourth line personality. You're all about networking and friendliness and trying to, stay in the flow with with your friends. It's hard for either of you to ever really just tell a friend no more ever again. The worst you'll ever do on 90% of the occasions is basically distance yourself, but you're still remain friendly. That's a fourth line thing. It's remaining a type of friendly unless it's so egregious that you have to, there are those instances. So, as these networks rise up around you, Moana, you end up being the one that helps mutate that network. You help mutate aspects of it because of these two crosses you guys are on. Do the charts come up, Jen?
Yeah, give me one moment.
Yeah, and it's really a beautiful thing. So Manifestor on the left, these are two juxtaposition crosses. Juxtaposition just means it's the changing cross between the right angle moving into the left angle. If no one knows what that means, we've dealt with this on episodes in the past.
It's the moment of the stitch.
It's the moment. Yeah. Yes.
It's going from out to in or in from out.
Yeah. I also like to call it's the stitch that holds it together, holds the two parts together, quite literally. The changing ground, or sometimes I call it the knuckle, because everything else on either side of it is doing the stuff, but the knuckle is the changing spot. And so these 4-1 profiles, fourth lines, you both have one. I remember saying to you, I've never seen that before, where both partners had this 4-1 profile.
I thought that was amazing in both the incarnation crosses, like both on juxtaposition.
Juxtaposition crosses. That's what the 4-1 is. The 4-1 is the juxtaposition. And then after the 4-1 comes the 5-1, 5-2, 6-2, 6-3, and those are the left angles, and then back into the right angles, 1-3, and so forth. But the juxtaposition crosses always take on the name of the gate, unlike the other crosses. Juxtaposition crosses always take on the name of the gate. So Moana's juxtaposition crosses, since her son is in the third line, the third gate, fourth line, that her personality son is the third gate. And so that's the Gate of Mutation. This is about bringing something new beginnings, new, sudden new stuff, drastically sudden new, suddenly stuff shows up where it wasn't before. So Moana's juxtaposition cross would be the closest thing I could say that would be like creation, because it is the very definition of there was nothing and now there's something. So it's creation. And then you get to David's, and this juxtaposition cross, both these crosses are incredibly fixed in their way. So as soon as you guys come together, what ends up happening is, in your both, as soon as your fixed ways line up, you become an inseparable force. It's hard to pull it apart. It'd be like trying to break the strong force of a piece of nuclear material, atomic material, and smashing you guys together is the same thing. You need a super collider sometimes to bring 2 4-1 people together. So boom, collide them together. If they happen to meld and there's that nuclear process, pulling apart those strong and weak forces of the atom, that's once you guys meld, then it's going to be equally hard to pull it apart. You guys will both have your sort of fixed ways. And as you guys grow to realize that you like that and the other, and that you can live with that, and sooner or later it turns into, I would never choose to live without it. That's what happens over time. And it's a beautiful thing. This is a design of going the distance with awakeness, with awareness. And without awareness, it's a design of potentially flying apart at the handles and both being miserable. And it's also a design of, if there's a lot of issues of breaking up and coming back and breaking up and coming back, that I can see that as well.
Oh, that's happened.
Oh.
Just telling you right now. We've been together a while. We've broken up, come back.
Well, I didn't know that, and it's just funny, these charts. when you guys hear me read for you, you hear me do a lot of, well, blah, 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 I'll assert a thing. And then suddenly I'll be like, is that right? I was like, do you recognize that? Because I don't actually know. I'm reading a two-dimensional image and I'm putting it on top of real flesh and blood lives. So yeah, his son, David, your son in the fifth hexagram, the fifth gate, creates that channel that goes from the sacral all the way up to the G center, this channel of rhythm. And so it's the juxtaposition of habits. And we found out when we were reading that there was habits, there was rituals, there was things that stay the same. David, when you were little, walking to school, if ever you walk, wherever you walked to when you were little, that was a regular thing you would walk to. Did you notice you would consistently try and count the number of steps or find something that equaled less steps later? Did that happen to you?
Yeah, for a long time, I lived very close to where, my grade and middle schools were. So walking was a very big habit, and counting steps, counting the number of tiles on the sidewalk and everything is very much a habit.
Jennifer, I describe this to you over and over, don't I?
Mm-hmm.
Various versions of this. Yeah, that's what this channel does. It's fully rhythmic, and it's trying to assess the rhythm of the whole thing and advance and sophisticate its rhythm, whatever that thing is. And so I was a big step counter too. I was a crack counter. I was a tile counter. And I was always also an angle counter to try and see, does this angle reduce a step or two if I started counting? You notice the habit of counting, suddenly you can't stop. Did it ever bug you that once in a while it's like, I just want to not count, and your mind keeps counting? You ever have that?
Yeah, I would count a lot. I mean, I think I can even think later on, like, the example earlier was grade school and walking to school and stuff. But in my middle school and later, I kind of had a couple of different paper routes. So I'd have to walk on those paper routes and count the papers and count the steps and count, that the distance between the houses. How can I finish this paper route faster? And it's always optimizing and counting for sure.
That it's a very funny thing. And by the way, parents of my I'm 57, so parents of my generation and parents maybe even of your generation, when they see that stuff come out naturally, there's a reasonable question comes up to them because they don't know, they didn't have this knowledge, is to ask about things like autism or spectrum or unique, or my child is special. You ever get any of those? Because I got a few of those labels when I was growing up.
Yeah, for sure.
That's funny. Moana, did you ever think, oh my God, my boyfriend's a little special? That's what we called it with the kid.
I mean, he told me he went to gifted school, and I'm like, well, that would explain why you're so smart. That's about it. That's all I got. And now with our toddler, everyone's like, he's so smart. And I'm like, no, it's just daddy. He gets it from him. He picks up things really, really quickly because daddy's always teaching him stuff.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll be reading for your kid, for the child as well. I got his chart, and then I'm all about doing follow-ups on this kind of stuff and bring the child's chart up and start looking into that to be educating parents on how to best. But I know I pointed out some stuff that the other night when we read and so forth.
The cave thing is very poignant with him. He just likes to put himself in the closet. He literally just goes in and plays hide and seek in all the closets in our house.
And he was building a fort this afternoon.
I love forts.
He wanted to be inside and coming out and inside the cave, under the covers and stuff.
There's an easel in the play area I take him to. He likes to come in and out of the easel.
That's so funny. I love that. Absolutely adore that. Jennifer, I'm going to point out a couple of the electromagnetics that show up here. So notice they both have a similar love language, and it reaches with that. He's got the 40 off the ego, and she's got the 37 off of a defined solar plex. So together they make an ego being.
Yes.
With the mighty roar to do the work. And once his ego is, that's the thing, Moana. As soon as you come into his aura, he's also got a gate 51 off of the ego. I don't know if you guys can see that. The ego is a tiny little triangle.
Right here.
Right here. that gate 51, it might be hard to see, but that gate 51 that points at the yellow diamond, it's red. This is the gate of shock. Jennifer, you have this whole channel. It's about initiating things. It's a warrior spirit, and it's always willing. When I say always, it's often willing to leap. So Moana, you come in, you turn on this ego willpower for both of you. When I say you guys turn it on as this binary that comes together, and then suddenly the warrior in gate 51 leaps. So when you come in and say, hey, I've got a new fire walk to walk over, more times than not, we're going to see an excitement reaction, because this gate looks for excitement. And the melancholy that comes out of it is when there's nothing new under the sun. There's a guaranteed melancholy, a sadness that shows up routine over and over. It might be long stretches in between, but you can rest assured it will continue to keep popping up through the whole life as a way of bringing you into what we call a sadness state that is a fertile ground to create something new. Our sadness states give us power, and we've been looking at our sadness states like they're bad and take a medication for it. That's what we've been told, and that's actually not true. And the 5-year-old was the last one to know that. The 4-year-old adult comes along and says, you look sad. And if the kid knew to say what was true, if they had the right language, they would say, I'm not sad. Or they would just say, it doesn't matter. It's no big deal.
Well, society has that, if for an emotional beings, what I'm learning about myself is that when I'm in an emotional wave, sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with me or what's going on. It's just the energy. But people will be like, if they see you melancholy, it's like, oh, what's wrong? What happened? Immediately, even though there's nothing wrong and nothing happened. It's that they associate because you're in that mood, or it's a lower, it's an emotional wave. You're in the melancholy, that it's something that happened. So it's a good thing that you pointed out.
Right.
I didn't even know. I told Danny that. And it's like, yeah, there's days I just wake up grouchy. There's no reason for it. I'm just like, everything's just going to make me grouchy today. I'm just grouchy.
It's just the thing. So when you light up that ego, that gate 51 has a warrior spirit. It's our humanity's genetic proclivity to have an individualistic, unique warrior spirit that in a flash of a moment, mutatively, will leap into the fire, will leap into the void, will jump across the Snake Canyon because his name's Evil Knievel, will whatever the thing is, will lean into the experience. And its sadness comes when there's nothing new to lean into, when there's nothing new under the sun. Sadness over the lack of any type of new excitement. So, David, in your life, this would show up sometimes as like, that would just show up because your fixed patterns create something that's so uniquely fixed that suddenly in your psyche might show up this notion that I'm doing the same thing over and over again. I'm bored with what I'm doing, but I can't help doing it. There's nothing new under the sun. I'm a little bit melancholic for this hour, for this afternoon. There's nothing new under the sun. The warrior with no wars to fight, no battles to conquer, right? With no kingdoms to show up in. In our modern day, it's no, whatever. Just nothing new under the sun is the keynote for all of that. So that would show up as a thing. And then this emotional wave. So here's the thing, right? You have an emotional being on one side, an emotional manifestor on one side, and a manifesting generator unemotional on the other side, open emotionally. That's a great combination as long as you get to know what it is. So how have you guys, can you speak at all to how you've experienced Moana's emotional wave? First of all, let me ask you, David, have you ever thought there was just something illogical, erratic, and what the hell about that?
I mean, there's been times where I've kind of felt like, wow, she's kind of down for a while, and I wouldn't necessarily understand it. But I think after coming to understand, what her type is and what her rest cycles need, that gives me a lot more empathy for that, understanding for what that is and where I've seen that in the past, and maybe now what I can do in the future to kind of honor it for her. And I think instead of getting angry or frustrated or not understanding it, then I can kind of react quite differently to that. And you know,
So you've noticed that you take a new extreme and fit it into a rhythmic flow.
mm-hmm.
Create a new pattern that accommodates the new extreme thing. And by extreme, very mundane things become extreme, you know, because they're new. They're just new. Again, think of the single cell. Anything can be extreme to it, and then it has to accommodate that environment. So now when you see that Moana is going into a rest cycle, even if it's sort of in the middle of the day or at a different time other than time, you're like, oh no, sweetie. Suddenly you find a rhythm that is able to pick up and hop into that role. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. I can kind of recognize it, honor it in a way that, you know, I wouldn't hold it against her or
Right.
you know, frustrate myself or whatever. It's just, you know, that's the understanding of the way she is and the way, you know, potentially I am and how I would react to it. So it's a tremendous value to understand that, to come to that understanding for myself and for, you know, for us as a couple.
It's helpful for the manifester, because I can't tell you how many past relationships that I was in that when we go into rest mode, it's literal rest mode. There's like no drive for much. And I would be called lazy or, you know, just all sorts of things, getting beat up for that. And then therefore I have an open route and I would beat myself up for it and start performing or doing more, not knowing when enough is enough, and eventually burn out. So that's awesome that you're doing that for her.
Yeah.
Moana, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I would maybe in the past think, like, I wouldn't vocalize and call her lazy or anything like that, but I might have thought it, you know, like I might have thought, like, what is this behavior? What is going on? And not being able to understand it is frustrating, right, for me. And then now to kind of honor it and understand it is going to create, you know, a whole better new understanding and a better way forward for sure.
Moana, did you ever feel guilty?
All the time. And you know what's funny? I was anemic for a big part of my life, so I blamed it on my anemia. I was like, I just don't have enough iron. That's why I'm always so tired and always sleepy. That's what it is. But I should be doing more. Oh, why am I not doing enough? Yeah, so totally relate to that 100%.
Jennifer, does all that stuff sound familiar?
Oh, very, very much so.
Yeah.
I get that way too now. It's like a battle with my open root and my sacral, because when I am learning to practice compassion on myself when I do go into a rest cycle, because I know that the more that I honor it, the more that the creative energy is going to start to flow again. When I would beat myself up about it, then I would let my sacral come in and keep doing and not know when enough is enough. And then I really burn out. And it's a big crash and burn. And then I feel guilty about it. And, you know, it's a vicious cycle. And I've had issues with it in past relationships. And I am someone that, you know, I would overcompensate to keep the peace, especially if it was not the best environment. So it was just a cauldron of just crap running through my head. So now that I know this and I'm aware, it's helped tremendously.
It totally does. That's the thing. And then just one last thing about this emotional way. And for anyone who doesn't know, the reason I keep, you know, Jennifer has so much to say on all of this stuff is because she's an emotional manifester. And then as it relates to the open root, you know, both Jennifer and I have an open root center like you do. And that always makes us feel under pressure. And this whole thing saying it's not my pressure is something that's not so easy at first to actually comprehend. It's still not easy at times, you know, not my pressure. But seeing it kills it is the thing. And it's a beautiful thing. So, Moana, anything else on the emotional wave? Because between you and Jennifer's got the wave that'll spike and sometimes it'll rise and fall, but mostly it planes along and it sort of shows up. It spikes up or spikes down. That's more closely, what that Jennifer's wave is, because it's in this individual definition. I'm not going to go into that too much, but yours is on the outside. Her channel, she's got two channels. One is this emotional going to the solar plex from the root. So this is tribal, and that's a ratchet wave. It goes forward and backward. It's ratcheting. It's looking for the right resources, the right principles, the right support for things. Support is so important. It's trying to be very sensitive to where's the community, where's the support, what's next. And then the outside one that goes from 35 to 36 to 35, this is in the collective circuitry, and it needs to be shared. And it starts with what we think of as a crisis. And only seeing it starts to tone it down from a crisis into simply the notion of inexperience. And so I remember saying this to you. I said, no, this is just inexperience. You're just not experienced in the thing. And so it feels like a crisis. And that gets locked up in our head, and that gets conditioned into us. And then you start to break the pattern by seeing it. But this outside channel is an emotional definition, and it's manifesting. It goes straight to the throat. Solar plex. Donald Trump has this channel. Russell Brand has this channel. It's called a crash wave. It's not just planing along. It seems to, what I found in this channel is there's always motion in the wave. So it's moving up and then it's moving down, and it can crash up, go flying into the sky and come crashing down. And your juxtaposition cross of mutation not always, but easily feels stuck because it's waiting to be mutative. And then you're a manifester, so having to wait is like killer, right?
It's like, when is this going to be over? I don't want to be tired and doing nothing.
Right. So
how much longer?
So have you noticed now that seeing it, because all of your emotional definition, except for one, is unconscious. So most of this stuff keeps happening unconsciously. So it shows up for you rather than you sort of being able to see it coming mostly. And that can be very disconcerting, because the unconscious red stuff in our body graph just shows up. The black stuff, we sort of see it coming because we have conscious access to it. So what have you seen?
Something that I don't know, it came into my mind is I remember my parents saying I was moody. It's like, oh, she's in a mood.
Right.
And I don't know why I never thought about that. I'm like, and now it makes sense. It's like, okay, I was just experiencing a wave, but they didn't know how to deal with it. So they just label it a certain way and be like, oh, she's just that way right now. Just leave her be.
That was wise. If your parents were able to leave you be when you were in a mood, that was wise of them.
Yeah. Yes.
Go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say I had to do anger management when I was younger.
That must have been. You must have hated that. You were like, "Why am I here?"
It was more of the because I had people telling me what to do in every which way direction. If it wasn't coming from my mom, it was coming from my grandmother, it was coming from my dad, my stepfather, any which way direction. So the only way that I could, out of the not self theme, being young, was to throw things. So that's how I would lash out or disappear on top of the roof and go away from everybody. But yeah, my mom put me, especially in my teenage years where I really started to rebel. I had to do like 2 years of anger management. And that taught me how to control my anger. So I don't know if that's the best way, especially when it does come to the manifester. I learned a lot of beneficial skills for it, but now I use it as a signpost to tell me that there's something that's not going right in my life.
Yeah, when you start to see as a manifester, it's either type, when you start to see that frustration as a generator, or which turns to anger quickly but doesn't stay there, or the just straight up anger as the manifester, when you start to see that, yes, it says the theme of the not self. However, when you're really looking at it, it becomes the tool of the self. It no longer, again, all this stuff is meant to transcend the labels that are here. We just have to use these labels because this is how we understand it on the planet today. A few generations from now, as this information evolves, we'll be able to change these keynotes and now, as soon as someone wakes up to their nature and starts seeing it, you start to see, well, anger becomes an incredible tool as a signpost. Yeah. And
what's interesting with anger too is I think depending on the person, you express it differently. Like I have internalized anger. I almost never said anything out loud. Like I remember my mom said something, I would like write mean things about her in my notebook, or like cuss her out and write it on like a wall, but then hide things on top of it so she wouldn't see it, but eventually she found it, and do that kind of way of expressing anger. Or then later on, what happened is I'd repress the anger, repress it, and then eventually I would just completely stop talking to that person and be like, you're dead to me. You and they were like, what happened? But I never expressed any of the things they were doing to make me angry internally.
Right. That provoked the anger inside. And now that you're starting to see it, can you see now that this is a great tool? Both you guys.
Yes.
I got a good one. And we probably should wrap this up a little bit, but have you guys found something that you can that you laughed at yet? When you recognize it's like,
Great question.
Yeah, you found anything that you laugh at because it's funny?
Me and Dan find stuff to laugh at all the time.
Yeah.
And it's so relieving. Like when we can pull out stuff that in the past I may have been embarrassed about or ashamed, or I would go behind closed doors and beat myself up in my head like, why did I say that? Why did I do that? And now when I see it expressed and I can associate it with something in my human design, I laugh because I'm like, that's so hilarious that it did that. Or I'll react to the way the energy is flowing through me.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of aha moments. I think now we can kind of look back and say, you behave this way. I think like your pattern of like silent treatment, right? in the past,
juicy stuff. People need this.
That was like a recurring pattern, and it was because of the anger, and you repressed it, and then that was your kind of nature, I think. But now we can kind of look back and laugh at it a little bit, and I think it's more like really big aha moments. Like you're kind of thinking, "Wow, that's it."
Or even like the thing that we mentioned to Dan in our previous call, like the last time we had a disagreement, it was because I was trying to pull him away from him doing something.
Yeah. And
he completely paid no attention to me, and that immediately went to anger, but not anger in the I yell at you. It's the anger in that, oh, okay. And I just was like, I'm not going to speak to you because you pissed me off kind of way. And then he'd be like, why are you mad? And I would be like, you figure it out. I'm not going to tell you. That was the pattern. And I'm like, oh, we don't have to keep doing that anymore.
Yeah. It definitely opens the channel for discussion. And like, you really think about, oh, that is my nature to do that thing. I can get very self-involved, right? That's kind of what I can do. And then sometimes, you just really want me to say the thing, like tell you what I'm up to, or
I think it's just like maybe it's a manifestor throat wound, but it's like if I say something, I'm like if I say something and you don't acknowledge it, it's like I get extra butthurt.
Yep, exactly. And now you've come to notice that sometimes he's not hearing you, or it went in and it's trying to pull him out of his rhythm, which his little 5-year-old is trying to say, no, I don't want to go. And so that's what's actually true inside of him. And so you guys have come up with, I remember you told me about this. You have a coping skill. If it's important enough, you pull yourself into his aura so that your emotional wave can also express this for him. the silent part that's coming out of your energy, and it'll capture his eyeballs. I think you had said something like that, where you'll physically capture his attention if it's important enough to you. And has any of that happened?
I mean, no, after the reading, we haven't had any disagreements. And even if like something would, now I'm just like, no, I'm just going to inform him. I'm going to say, hey, magic words, I need you. Then he'd be like, okay, give me 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I at least have a time frame now. And sometimes that 5 minutes comes and goes, and I'm like, he's still in the thing. Hey, 5 minutes has come and gone. Maybe come out now. And he'd be like, oh, yeah, you're right. I did say 5 minutes. And yeah, it's no longer like a, oh, man, I'm so mad at you. Now it's just like a funny thing. It's like, oh, he's doing the things, or I'm doing the thing.
It shows up with our ability to have this patience for the other. And the more we look at it, the more that patience reaches a godlike infinite patience for the other and certain things that can't be helped. Jen, I'd love to point out, so he's got that 40 and she's got the 37 between the ego and the solar plex center. So as soon as she comes along with that emotional definition that's tribal from the root to the solar plex, this approach, 19 is approaching, that's what it's doing. And it's bringing all of her manifested resources with it. That's what it does. And then it brings that affection out of gate 37. And as soon as that comes out in some kind of warm way that needs David's 40 turns on and rolls up its sleeves and does the work. And it becomes a love language. David does the work because it's the work that says in those 5 minutes, it says, I love you. It says, I do this. I love you. Let's, even though it may not express those words, it's one of our love languages. Another powerful electromagnetic you have, which we didn't deal with on the last call, is Moana. You have a gate 10 coming off of an open G center, and right there, and David's got the 34 on the 57 in the spleen, sacral and spleen. This is an electromagnetic. So David's gate of power, the power of the great, connects to your gate 10, and then suddenly you're fully empowered to explore all the things about yourself. For you, that's very mutative. That it's a channel of exploration it makes. So together, you guys make this channel of self-exploration, which when you're together, a couple becomes three things. It becomes Moana, David, and put your names together in some cute way. And that third thing is always present. The two auras meet. When there's problems, we call it the beast with two backs. When it's working sort of like it's supposed to, it's just the third party that becomes the union. So in your union, you guys have this perfected behavior where you're always able to act right wherever you are when you're together, survive any moment in the now with incredible attuned awareness, and you're always able to self-reflect internally with each other and separately. The channel of exploration is here, and it's wicked powerful. It empowers the identity to love itself in its motion. So now you can know that when you find yourself in love with yourselves in whatever motion it is you're on, it's not that it's meant to last for every last minute of your life, but it is true. You really do. That's what's going on at the time. You don't have to second guess it anymore. Did I really love that? Was it good enough? No. If you were present in the moment, it was good enough. And one other, Jen, I want to point out to you, two others. She has gate 6 coming off of a defined solar plex, and he's got gate 59 coming off of a defined sacral, the channel of intimacy and mating. This is bonding 101. This is a design of the potential for fertility and making more reproduction, as well as just being able to basically break down barriers. This channel releases the friction that holds back the barriers that stand in the way of union. And so you guys are always doing that. However, when you're living in what you're not, and there's strife and stuff, her gate 6 slices off the union. So you're going to be the first one to pull the silent treatment. Now that I think of it,
it's true.
Yeah, and
I have gate 6.
Yeah, I do too. And David, you're the first one to basically lean back in and do the but baby thing, and suddenly he breaks through your aura.
That's also true.
Well, that's what 59 does. 59 is just hungry to basically approach union and bonding, and so it's got this unique quality of it breaks down the aura. It breaks down the barriers to union through breaking through the aura of the other. It doesn't. It's not a tool that gets to stay online all the time, but it does break through. It's a breaking down of the resistance of the aura of the other temporarily, and the possibility and potential to achieve some kind of bonded union that the genes want to make more on. So you guys are fertile, by the way. So, you know, unless one of you went and got fixed or did something, just be aware you could, oopsie, make another baby quickly. And another electromagnetic that they have, which is rather potent, is wicked potent. It's format. She's got a gate 9, focused and concentrated, coming off the bottom of the sacral gen.
Yep, right here.
Yep, and he's got the gate 52 from an open center. So David has felt his share of pressure. I got to move. I got to do more. I'm sort of under pressure to get rid of the pressure of feeling like you need to get something done quicker. Sort of always in a hurry, or too often in a hurry brings you away from your nature. It's not your pressure, David. She comes along with that gate 9, and this comes together, and suddenly David comes into the room, and now Moana's gate 9, which is the taming power of the great, can suddenly focus and concentrate. So David leaves the room, and Moana has a hard time focusing and concentrate. David comes back in the room, and suddenly Moana can get the work done.
I was telling Danny about that. Like, there's times where I'm like, I have no willpower or motivation to work on a thing. So I will tell David, like, why don't you just, like, I don't know, watch some YouTube videos or play some video games, and I'll just try to get the thing done beside you. And it almost always works. I'm like, just him being in the vicinity, I'm able to get the thing that I've been procrastinating to get done.
Well, and the nice thing is, if there's something else going on, David can be as much as 8 feet away. He's got the magnetic aura, that channel 15.5. When you have this whole channel in your body graph, it doubles the size of your aura. It becomes a double wide. Literally, it doubles the aura, and so it's meant to be magnetic. This is as far as it relates to the G center, gate 15 is what's magnetic to humanity. It's the love of humanity and the love of or the ability to deal with the extremes of humanity. And so it's double wide. As soon as you have a gate 15, especially if it's attached to the sacral, you've got a double wide aura. So instead of 1 arm's length in all directions, it's a full 2 arms lengths or more in all directions. So you guys could actually have a little tiff and a disagreement, not necessarily want to be in each other's aura per se. And as long as you're within 8 feet, you can be on the other side of a wall, and it'll still technically work if you, Moana, are sensitive enough to get into the experiment of looking at that.
And I would say she is sensitive enough with the defined solar plexus.
Yes, double defined, Jen, and that and with the channel of sensitivity, 1949 is the most sensitive. It's entirely sensitive. It's like a hair trigger sensitive at times, so it's sensitive to everything, as it's supposed to be.
I noticed he does a thing. Like, when something bugs him, he does this upper lip thing. And I'm like, do you know you do that? And he's like, what upper lip thing? I mean, you don't even know it. You, like, purse your lips a certain way when you hear something that you don't like. And he's like, no one's ever noticed that about me. And I'm like, well, they weren't looking close enough.
They weren't looking. Someone who loves you, David, was looking. And when this, and David noticed on the reading that his work does seem to come out of him as soon as Moana delivers human affection. That's genuine. Genuine affection drives a lot of that. So in an affectionate way, she brings her 37 and her 9. And as soon as David gets into her aura with his 40 and his 52, she can suddenly sit still and concentrate and do the work. They put an ego together. They put a root together. They can sit still in the pressure field, and they can do the work that the ego would demand. The ego drives the willpower of the planet. So it's a beautiful combination. I love this. Yeah. Any other questions you guys might want to ask that I've been chugging along? Because there's other stuff we'll get into when we go further. arrows.
So far, it's been lovely to hear, like some of the confirmation of the feelings that we've kind of had, and also the understanding of what our individualized behaviors are, but also how we kind of interact as a couple. Like, you know, how our auras interact as we're close to each other, how we complete the other half of the other. And, you know, it's pretty incredible. We found it like been quite enlightening. I mean,
yeah, I've
really
been just
nice.
raving to anyone who would listen. It's like, you have to get this done. I told my best friend, I'm like, your wedding present is you getting a reading from Danny. Like,
Beautiful.
you guys are always bickering, and that's going to be fixed. Find out his birth time already. And she's like, I don't know where it is. I'm like, just do it. Because when he proposes, that's what you're getting from me as a birthday, as a wedding gift.
Are they close to you, Moana? And is this a girlfriend of yours? That's a close friend? Pretty close?
See, this is what I was saying. Most of my close friends are a plane ride away.
Oh,
Yeah.
Physically far, but mentally, you know.
Yeah. So like,
close.
you know, we Skype with each other every week. But yeah, she's in Maryland in USA, and we became friends when I did a student exchange to the University of Hawaii, and we met in Tahitian dance class.
nice.
That's awesome.
Well, the aura does travel over the phone. It does travel over the phone. It's just that it's different. In person is always the power of the aura on.
Oh yeah, she got a Nexus card just because she comes up to Canada so often.
Nice. Well, if you hound her on a daily basis and you let that beautiful emotional rhythm of yours travel through your voice, you know, help her find the you'll impact her potentially to find that birth time. And yeah, I would love to read for them so that they can, if they're bickering with each other now, then we got to get to that.
Yeah.
But dudes are less open than girls, I've noticed, just as an overall rule of thumb. Mm-hmm. David, you're a nice exception to that, by the way. It was really good. A lot of dudes.
I know he's.
We lucked out with this one, Moana.
I mean, it's in my nature to kind of understand myself, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, you know, from my own perspective, this is just another tool to get to that level of understanding. It, you know, in the past, I've kind of did some research and everything, you know, the chakra system, you have astrology and everything else, but this kind of all blends it very nicely together in a way I can understand. I think the graphs help. I think initially you're very overwhelmed by seeing that kind of chart and not understanding it. But once you have it professionally explained, you know, this is where Danny really showed his value and came in and explained things for us. It's like, you know, these are the channels that make you up. These are the channels that make you up. This is where we complete each other in various different ways. And it definitely opened up a lot of conversation for us and really, like, you know,
like the
new ways forward.
One of the things that Danny mentioned that I didn't even think about was how you mentioned not everybody has every channel filled up. And it's the whole point is for you to meet other people and like activate different things. And how you were like, yeah, when you add your kid into the mix, then you have a whole other entity going on. And that's what happens again when you meet with your friends. And it was like, oh my gosh, that was just a light bulb moment.
I love this. This is wonderful stuff, guys. I can't thank you enough. And I do love doing the time.
Sure.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful, wonderful feedback. We do have a couple of comments from Nikki. First one was,
I love you, Nikki. I miss you. Thank you.
As I've done healing work, I've gotten to the root of understanding that my spirit and uniqueness is exactly why my husband married me. I truly have nothing to fear or worry about. That's beautiful. Oh, and she also said, much love and many blessings, y'all. Seeing it kills it is one of my favorite things, Dan said. And I think responding to someone when you hear them is a respect factor that comes from the solar plexus. If that makes sense, it gets me too. 1G manifesting generator.
Sleeping Phoenix. She's the Phoenix. That's our Nikki. Yep. So thank you.
Well, that was beautiful. Thank you guys so much for coming on. And maybe in the future, after a couple of sessions and you get your kid done, we could do a follow-up on the whole.
That would be wonderful.
Oh, that'd be super
all of it
fun.
together, because that's that adding the kids into the mix is going to be something else too.
We want to raise these superhero children. They're all designed to be that way. Let's swap out the current leadership on the planet for awakeness.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got goosebumps, man.
Well, thank you guys, and
Thank
for
you.
those of you who are viewing, get your butt in here. If
Yeah.
you want a couples session, make sure you click the links down. You see it scrolling. You can check the description. Book your session with Dan. If you want a single session, book your session with Dan. If you want to get your kids done, get it done, guys. So we're here
You won't
to
regret
the
it.
world.
Let's spread the
Definitely.
word.
Thank
Yep,
you.
let's spread the word and make more. Alrighty, guys. I really appreciate it. Love you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Y'all have a
Okay.
great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.